welcome back. This is the part 2 of Lethal Kisses with the relationship between Gaylin and Kristen. I hope that you enjoy. Part 1 is located in the videos below. And if you have not subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Enjoy. Kristen was still pondering about what Patty said to her the next morning when she sat at her desk. She had gone over and over in her head that it was absolutely true what Patty had said. She had to admit to herself that she wanted to see where Gaylin would pop up next. He tended to show up just kind of unannounced. She smiled and felt little butterflies tumble in her stomach. She turned to look at the clock and realized it was lunchtime. She turned off her computer and gathered her purse to go. She had just unlocked her car door when she heard the familiar voice call to her. Walking out of the shadow was Leonard, all 6'2" of him, wearing his black suit and gray tie. Her favorite outfit of his. His blonde hair was brushed back, and his blue eyes seemed to gleam. But the pain of what he did hammered to her chest, and she turned to go. He grabbed her around the waist and turned her around. She broke free from his hold and ran to her car. "Don't run, Kristen. Stop this," he cried. "I need to talk to you." "I have nothing to say to you, Leonard. Go home." "No." He came to her again, and this time grabbed her arm. She tripped on her heels just as he let her go. The combination left her falling to the ground and him missing to catch her. Her bare knees met the ground and her flesh sliced open. She had braced her fall with her hands and her palms came up bloody. But to her surprise, Leonard grabbed her by the arm and shook her hard. "See, if you'd only listened to me, this wouldn't have happened," he cried. Tears filled her eyes as she spoke. "Leave me alone, Leonard." "Leonard," a voice from behind her boomed. She turned and found Gaylin walking toward them. His eyes carried a dark stare that frightened her. When he reached them, Leonard's hand loosened and she stepped back as her heels snapped beneath her and she lost her balance. If Gaylin hadn't caught her, she would have fallen to the ground a second time. When she turned to look at his eyes, genuine care stared back at her. But she was yanked out of his arm by Leonard. "Gaylin, I didn't know you were in town," he said as he caught her guard and steadied herself by placing her hands on the car. "I arrived a few days ago." "What are you doing here?" "I came here to see Kristen, actually." Leonard passed a glance between them. "You've met my wife?" "Ex-wife," Kristen said through clenched teeth. "And yes, we've met. We had dinner together at my grandfather's." "Are you okay?" Gaylin asked her. She stared at the mess she was in and realized she couldn't go back looking to work like she did. As she looked up into Gaylin's gaze, he suddenly knew how she felt. He took her elbow gently. "Why don't we go to my hotel? It's a few blocks from here and you can get cleaned up there." "Like hell you are," Leonard said. "Leave me alone, Leonard. I'll call the cops on you if you follow us." Gaylin's hotel was, of course, the penthouse on the very top floor. It was as big as her condo. He left her to clean up her wounds in the bathroom and told her to come back to the main room where he would have lunch for them. She bandaged her knees and her palms as best she could before she walked out. She heard him ending a call as she walked in. His white button-down shirt was pulled out and left unbuttoned 3 buttons down. The sleeves were rolled up halfway, revealing thick forearms. She felt awkward and stood still. He smiled and gestured for her to sit. She accepted his offer and sat down. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I'm okay." "Is this the first time he's done this to you?" Kristen looked away. "Can we not talk about that?" "Domestic abuse is something you shouldn't be ashamed to talk about." She shot her eyes up at him. "You're his friend. Aren't you supposed to be defending him?" "Let's get one thing straight here, Kristen. It doesn't matter if I'm friends with Leonard or not. I don't agree with what he just did to you. I wouldn't have stood for it. And because I feel such a strong connection to you, I really wish you would stop assuming that I'm going to defend him for all he does wrong." She looked away. "It doesn't look like what you think it does. I tripped. Honestly, I did." She looked back up at him. "I wouldn't have let him live if he had laid hands on me." "I'm glad to hear that." The doorbell chimed. He strolled over to let room service in. The waiter rolled in a cart with 2 trays. He paid them and they left. Please, join me for lunch. She stood up. I have to go. I'm late for work. He smiled. No, you don't. Why are you always running? Why are you always chasing? Because I like you, that's why. Now answer my question. She lifted her chin up. Because I like you, that's why. He began walking toward her, and she felt the room fill up with his intense stare. Her breathing faded into a haze, and she swallowed down the lump forming at the base of her throat. When he reached her, she saw how much she was affecting him. With one swift move, he had her in his arms, his lips crushing against hers hard. When their teeth clacked together, he let out a low growl that sent her spine tingling. I'm going to come undone, he whispered. But before she could answer, there was a pounding at the door, loud and hard. She pulled back, and he swore as he stood up. And then Leonard's voice was heard. If you two don't open up this door right now, I'm going to kick it the hell in. Gosh, Gaylin said as he helped her stand up. He kissed her softly one more time, and they both walked out. He opened the door, and Leonard barged in. It didn't take long for him to assess what was going on with her swollen lips and the way Gaylin looked. When Leonard had returned the gaze to Gaylin, what happened next was predictable. Leonard's fist connected with Gaylin's chin. Kristen screamed as Leonard stepped toward her with angry eyes. How could you do this to me? Why him? He's my friend, Leonard cried. Kristen shoved him off as he came toward her. Don't turn this around on me, Leonard. We're divorced. I have the right to do as I so please. We're not done. Oh, yes, we are. We were done the moment I walked in and I saw you giving your secretary a good time. Unless you want to be in jail, you should walk out right now. And let me give you a hint. Orange is not a color that's suitable on you. Leonard worked his jaw and moved toward her, but stopped. I love you. Why can't you see that? I want you back. But you fail to see that I don't want you. Now leave. Leonard sighed and turned to go. She waited until the door closed before she gathered her shoes and purse. Gaylin came to her and grabbed her arms. She put up her arms in surrender, and he backed away. I can't do this right now. I have to leave, Kristen said. Gaylin's face tore with hurt. Don't do this just because he came back accusing you of something you have a right to do in the first place. You know you want me. I felt it back there when you kissed me. Hell, honey, you were shaking in my hands. Or did you forget how you whimpered when I touched you? She blushed at his words and shook her head. I can't do this. I'll get hurt. I know you think I'll hurt you because of what that asshole did to you. But haven't you figured it out that I'm not Leonard? She looked up at him. But you don't even live here in the States. How would this ever work? Gaylin laughed. Sweetheart, I can buy myself a home here if you so wish. Right now, I'm considering it because I can't stand to be apart from you. I know it's crazy, but you have made something inside me live when I thought it had died. That rarely happens. And when it does, I think I should keep a hold on it, don't you think? Ignoring him, she brushed past him and out the door. Gaylin fingered the glass of whiskey on the counter and stared at the mini real estate housing he'd been looking on the internet. Yes, he was crazy for wanting to do this so fast, but he remembered how he'd been dead for so long, and she woke something up in him. He wasn't about to let that go easily. He searched for his phone and dialed the number to his parents' home. It rang a few moments before the servant answered. He identified himself, and before long, his father, Lindbergh Adamus, came on the line. Hello, son? What seems to be the problem? I hardly get a call unless there's an issue you can't solve, he said with his low and booming accented voice. Father, it's not business I've called to discuss with you. He laughed. I thought it wasn't. Let me guess. It's about a woman. It is. It's crazy, Father. It's Kristen Lindell. Ah, Corwin's granddaughter. She's a true beauty, isn't she? For the first time, he agreed with his father on that. Yes, I have seen her now, and I agree she is. I'm crazy. I'm sure I am. I just met her, yet I feel so connected to her. I don't understand it. Gaylin, listen to me. Love doesn't wait for you to be ready. It comes when it wants to, and you just have to trust it. There's enough blood and war in the world. There's no question in that area. Why must you question love? It's more pure and more enjoyable than any battle. If your heart is telling you to go forth, why wait? Gaylin sighed deeply. He knew the answer himself, but hearing someone else say it made him believe he was right. Thank you, Father. I needed to hear that. How is old Corin? He's anything but old. His father laughed. I agree on that. Give my best regards to him. Don't let her go if you believe she's woken something in you. His father hung up, and the last words he said made him know that this was the right path to take. Slamming the car door, Gaylin walked toward her office building just as she exited. The moment her eyes met with his, she froze, and he felt it. The pull, the power surge that ignited in his body that made every single part of him flutter alive. He saw it in her eyes, too. Her gaze became glossy, dough-like, almost black with a passion he knew he could match. The taste of her lips still lingered on him, and he could still feel how her curves felt underneath his palms. Kristen, meet me halfway, he whispered. I can't do this alone. I need your help in making this work. You know you want me. I can see it in your eyes. The effect I have on you is visible. She didn't move. Go away, Gaylin. I can't be with you. Why are you denying us? There is no us. Like hell there isn't. You're shaking in your damn heels right now, sweetheart. You're not willing to meet me halfway because you know there's no turning back. Why are you so afraid? She remained silent, and he waited. Finally, after staring at him for a long time, her feet began moving toward him until she was inches away from him. A smile spread across his face, but he saw that she had no happiness in her eyes. They were actually swimming in tears. When one dropped on her cheek, he caught it and wiped it away. Please don't cry. It cuts me like a blade, Gaylin said. Kristen sniffed and looked away. I can't do this with you, Gaylin. I made the mistake of falling head over heels in love with a man at first sight. It hurt me so deep that I spent almost 2 years trying to get over him. I'm still fighting that battle. I can't do this with you. I know it will ruin me. He lifted her chin to look up at him. He wanted to be the one to erase the pain. It hurt him to see how much she was trying to fight over this war. Kristen, sweetheart, I know that what he did to you hurt you. Hell, just hearing about it made me flinch, and I'm usually pretty calm in my emotions. I wouldn't do anything close to what he did to you. I want to erase those memories from your mind. Are you willing to let me help you in making new memories? Memories that would save you instead of torturing you? She didn't answer him. Gaylin pulled her in closer to him and inhaled her fresh scent. It sent a chill down his back. And then when her arms came to hold him, he knew he received his answer. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered softly, but I think I'll regret it if I don't try. He pulled away and kissed the corner of her mouth. That's my girl. They had dinner together at his hotel. He ordered in and they had a carpet picnic. She laughed as he fed her strawberries and they were locked in each other's gaze. But Gaylin knew that he couldn't wait for dessert. He wanted something more, and it came in the form of her. So when she went to wash her hands, he came up behind her and placed his hands on her hips. He felt her shudder and it ripped him apart. He turned around and kissed her deeply. The breath was knocked out of him, and he felt his heart kicked up a notch. It made the chills in his spine tingle to his toes and back up again. Everything felt so right, so good about this very moment. The sun came in through the cracks of the window curtains, and Kristen stirred. Her throat was tight and dry as she stretched among the bed of soft blankets. She sat up and pulled the blanket around her as she realized she was alone in Gaylin's room. She pulled on her clothes and walked out to the main room where she found a note on the table. In his handwriting scrawled the words, "Out for a run." She smiled and tucked her blouse in as a knock came at the door. Thinking he forgot his keys, she quickly ran over to open the door. She was met with Leonard's eyes. The look of shock came on his face, and what happened next was not what she had in mind. His fist came toward her so fast she had no time to react. She fell over and he walked in, closing and locking the door. When Kristen got back up, Leonard grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head against the wall. Her breath was whipped from her body as he threw her across the table. Her face slammed into the corner and she felt hot blood rushing down her cheeks. It blinded her vision as Leonard came toward her. "How could you sleep with him? He is my friend. How long has this been going on?" he cried. "Leonard," she managed to say through chattering teeth. The pain was too much to bear, and she was losing breath. He came to her and grabbed her neck as the door opened, and Gaylin walked in. The horror in his eyes burned into her soul as he came over and slammed Leonard against the wall. The two men were at it, fists slamming against ribs and chins and face and neck as she struggled to breathe. She was cold, so very cold, and she began shaking as darkness took over her. "Kristen?" The voice was soft as she felt her heavy lids open. The room was too bright and she was sore all over. She heard the beeping of a machine beside her. Her throat was sore and she couldn't move. When her vision focused, she saw that her grandfather was beside her, but it was Patty who spoke to her. Tears filled her eyes as the memory came to her. "Don't move. You hurt yourself," Patty said. "You're safe. He can't hurt you here." Her grandfather reached over and touched her hand. "He's sitting in jail right now, and I'll make sure he won't see the light of day." "Gaylin," she whispered. "I sent him home," Patty said. "He wouldn't leave your side. I told him he was beginning to smell, so he better shower in case he woke up." Kristen smiled. "You're horrible." But her heart was fluttering with happiness at the sight of her friend and grandfather. She took a deep breath and tried to maintain her emotions as she thought about what had occurred. It was no accident. Leonard came to the hotel hoping he'd find her there. He must have known she was going to be there and came to prove his point. But she'd made the mistake of opening the door looking the way she did. Any sane person would know that the look she had on was the look of romantic tumbles in the bed all night long. It flipped him. Wait, why was she defending him? He was wrong. He hit her, and she was in the hospital. She shut her eyes. It was time she stopped taking the blame. She was not at fault. She had the right to sleep with whoever she wanted. She was not married to Leonard. When she opened her eyes, her grandfather smiled at her. "You just worry about getting better. I'll take care of all the rest." The door opened and Gaylin stepped in, looking freshly showered in a handful of roses. He smiled when he saw that she was up. Her grandfather and Patty stepped back and out of the room, giving them privacy. Gaylin came to her and kissed her cheek lightly as he laid the roses down on the desk. He took her hand and smiled as she tried to control her emotions. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my life." He let out a shudder. "I shouldn't have left you alone." "Why are you beating yourself up? It wasn't your fault." "I know, but I can't seem to shake the fact that if I hadn't come the time that I did, you wouldn't be here." She swallowed hard. "Gaylin, I want you to know something. What he did was his own doing. You came to save me. I owe you so much for that, and you can't beat yourself up for it." He nodded. "I almost killed him. I swear, I did. But you lost conscience, and all that mattered to me was you. Looking at you lying there, I wanted to kill him for what he did to you. No man should ever lay a hand on a woman. It's a cowardly thing to do, and that's what Leonard is, a coward. Kristen blinked back tears. For a moment there, I blamed myself. What? Why? Because I opened the door looking like I did. One look and he would have guessed that you and I were together all night long. I thought it was my fault, but I realized that he and I are divorced and I have the right to be with whoever I wanted, and I almost lost myself there. He shook his head. Sweetheart, God, you've been living in his victimized world for too long. I know, and it's easy to fall back into once something like this happens. But I swear to you that I won't if you continue to be strong for me too. I would never let you be alone. I swear. I know that it's crazy because we just met, but I feel as if you've been there with me all along, in all my good thoughts, my faith, my hopes, and the drive that makes me go forward. It's been you this whole time, Gaylin said. Kristen was released from the hospital a few days later, and Gaylin stayed with her so he could help with her recovery. She never knew how hard it was to bathe when your ribs hurt so much that you couldn't move your arms. Although they had already been together, she found herself blushing when Gaylin undressed her. He laughed and tried to play naughty as she tried to hide her blushing. He cooked and massaged her for a week straight. By the end of the first week at home, she was finally able to get up and move about without his support. But her face was still black and blue. She realized she had a scar above her eyebrow when she finally had a chance to really look in the mirror. After fixing dinner and eating, they settled on the couch and Kristen got the courage to ask him about his scar. This? He asked, pointing to his scar. It's a long story. Would you share it with me? Kristen asked. Gaylin became quiet for a moment. I got it when my brother died. Kristen's breath lodged in her throat at the words, but he continued and she listened. I was 10, and he was 8. We were hunting with my father on our land. It was cold and I wasn't good with a rifle. I was still scared, but I went anyways because I wanted my father to be proud of me. We were walking in a white winter, and then the snow began falling. It blinded me. I thought I saw something move, and I swung my rifle over. I shot at it. My father and I ran over to see, but we couldn't find anything. It was then that we noticed my younger brother was missing. Kristen saw that tears had formed in his eyes, and when his eyes met hers, a dark storm brewed in them. We found my brother a few feet away. He had a gunshot wound to his chest. I had accidentally shot him. My father was so angry that he slammed his rifle into me. We went back home, but the storm made us lose our way. My brother was losing blood, and I was scared. So scared that I felt nothing. My brother died in my father's arms. It took my father half his life to forgive me. But he left you this, Kristen said, touching his scar. Have you forgiven yourself? Gaylin cleared his throat and got his emotions under control. Yes, I have. It was an accident. A horrible accident. It took me a long time to forgive myself, but I did. And it took even longer for me to forgive my dad. But I did too. This scar reminds me of what our relationship has now become. A much better one. Kristen felt touched as she reached for his hand. Thank you for sharing that with me. Will you promise me something? Anything. Will you promise me that no matter what kind of threats Leonard comes back with, you will not do as he says? Kristen frowned. Why would you think I would do that? I don't want to lose you, and I'm scared that if he threatens you a bit, you might cave. My grandfather knows a few powerful people to put him away for a long time, and I can get a restraining order on him, Gaylin. I know a lot of rules and regulations thanks to my grandfather. I don't want you to worry about anything. Thank you for tuning in to part 2. Part 3 will be shared shortly. I hope that you are enjoying the story.